Welcome back to the IU427 garage, everybody. Today we're working on the Coupe, and I'm digging into the wire harness in the car. So I'm digging into the chassis wire harness, so come right back. Show you what I'm working on. If you go back a few videos when we were last working on the Coupe, you'll see that I put the rear harness in the car. So basically the chassis harness from the dash area all the way to the back of the car, and I just kind of loosely fit it. And I had it attached here at the back of the car with a couple of tie wraps, and I think those tie wraps are on the ground right now. So I pulled the entire rear harness out of the car, and here's why. We have a reverse lockout solenoid. It's a little electronically activated plunger that goes in the back of the T56 Magnum, and it keeps you from putting the car in reverse when the car is at speed in any production car. So any production car that the T56 came in has that solenoid, but it's a carryover into the T56 Magnum, which is kind of an aftermarket piece. But we need a way to activate that solenoid, and I looked into it when we first got the car here, and I was leaning towards having the customer buy this solenoid activation system from American Powertrain. But it's quite expensive, and I didn't know if he had already ordered one and that part just didn't make it to our shop or what. Well, it turns out it was in the bottom of our radiator box. Someone had gone through the trouble to repack the radiator into the box after fitting the shroud to it, and they put this activation module in the bottom of that box. And so when I pulled the radiator out of what I thought was a sealed box, I found this switch, this activation switch that is from American Powertrain. And I misquoted the way that this switch actually works because I hadn't looked at the wiring instructions to that point. Basically, the way that this thing wires in is it uses the vehicle speed sensor, and it uses that to tell the box that the car is not moving in a forward direction more than a certain mile an hour. I don't know if that's 3 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour, or whether it's 0 miles an hour. Regardless of how it works, we need to get into that rear chassis harness now and add some wires. So I had previously cut out the connector for the VSS, the vehicle speed sensor, because when we're doing a car that has the GPS speedometer, you just don't need that. And so what I do is I generally cut those wires, I bend them over onto themselves, and then I put a piece of heat shrink over the end in order to safe off the wires. Well, I saved the connector, and I always do. And I had to reinstall that in the harness today. But I not only installed that, I had to order a connector for that solenoid that mounts to the side of the transmission. Actually, it came mounted to the side of the transmission. And that connector I've had for a couple of weeks now, and I went ahead and I have wired that into the harness as well. It has 2 wires basically from the controller, the American Powertrain controller, that run all the way through the chassis harness to the front of the car. The last thing that I had to add to this harness, and this harness is full now, let me tell you, it's just at the capacity of the split loom that we have. So I had the owner take a look at these really cool taillights for the back of the Type 65 Coupe. I don't remember who makes them. If I remember, I will put the link in the description box of the video. But basically what these taillights do is they take the place of the mesh that are in the backmost portion of the car, the flat angled portion on the back of the car where the body mounts are, and then Factory 5 has you install this mesh to cover those areas up. In the original Daytona Coupe, I think those vents were probably functional. They extracted heat from the brakes. But in this coupe, they're not, and so we're gonna replace those with these LED taillights. And like I said, they mount in those two curved area vents in the back here. So we're not gonna have those vents in the back of the body. But what we will have is these cool curved LED lights. So the brake light is curved kind of like this, and then it comes back up. And then in the center of the portion, it has a turn signal LED that kind of curves the same way. And then at the very bottom of the taillight, there is a backup light for each side of the car. Now, if you're at all familiar with the Ron Francis harness that basically is provided in any complete kit, whether it's the Roadster, whether it's the Coupe, the Hot Rod, or the 35 pickup, there is no backup wire in that harness. There's also no backup connector in the transmission tunnel for you to tie into whatever your transmission has for an output. So I had to get a little creative here. First, I had to find the backup sensor that actually is mounted to the side of the transmission. It's actually on the passenger side of the car, so it's like right in here. It's like right below my finger underneath this bar on the side of the transmission. And it has a 2-pin weather pack connector on it. So no big deal. It's a female weather pack. I have male weather pack connector ends here. And so what I'll do is I'll make a connector that'll plug right into that. I've already tested to make sure that it works, and it does work. But that's another wire I had to run down that harness. So what I did is I ran a single wire, a green wire, back to the point at which the two sides of the car split to a left or a passenger and a right driver's side that would be looking from the front of the car, so that I didn't have one more wire that I had to contend with inside of the split loom, because it's packed now. It's pretty full. I'm sure I could sneak one more wire in there if I had to, but I don't want to. So I'm trying to get everything in there that I possibly could. So what I did first is I figured out where I needed to have the harness kind of laying. So before I took it out of the car, what I did is it was in the car right here. I basically grabbed it at this point, because that's the point at which I needed to kind of split out of the loom to go to the backup switch, which again is over on the passenger side of the transmission. And I pulled that kind of out of the car over to a point where I could actually wrap it with some tape. Now I used colored tape, and I used orange because it's the first color that I pulled out of my tape box. We do a lot of electrical work, and so the orange tape is actually phasing tape that we use to phase the different color wires in a commercial application that's running a 277 480 volt system. And like I said, it was the first one that I saw. It's nice and bright, so I knew that I'd be able to find it. And I wrapped it around the harness so that I knew that's where I needed to exit the split loom to go to the switch that was going to go, basically that's on the side of the transmission. Over here on the harness, you'll see, I think it's laying on the ground now. Nope, I've got it up here. Here is that tape. And that was my reference for where these two wires, these two green wires, needed to exit the actual harness. So these are the wires. This wire goes to the back of the car. This wire goes towards the dash. And I'm going to put that weather pack connector on here, and I'll finish looming this out. Back here is where I've got the two wires for This is actually the vehicle speed sensor, and you can see where I spliced the wires back on here. And this one here is for that solenoid for the reverse lockout. And you can see there are two gray wires here, but they actually turn into a pink and a green wire over on the other end of the harness. So I've got those three wires right here, and you can see I'm going to put another weather pack connector. I'll put a 3-pin weather pack connector on this end, and these will get tied into the backup light power, which I'm going to find another circuit that just happens to be green. I haven't looked at the chassis harness to see what that circuit is, but the backup lights, and especially since they're LED, pull absolutely no power whatsoever, so it really doesn't matter what circuit I tie onto. But I'm going to tie that into a powered circuit in the chassis harness, and then the green and the pink actually go to this controller. And what I did is I just cut the wires short that came with the controller, and this is where they'll get tied in, because here's the pink and here's the green. They'll get their own weather pack connector, and they'll tie in to that weather pack connector that I'm going to have on the rear harness. So that's what I'm working on today. I'm to the point now where I just have to finish looming these. So I'm going to add some split loom, the smaller stuff, to each of these two wires. Finish that connection right here where they tee off. I'm going to finish getting this taken care of. And then back here, I still have to run the two green wires because they split right here to each of the passenger and driver's side tail light harnesses, basically. So each of these right here go to one side or the other of the car, and then this one right here is the license plate light. So I've got to get it in these two harnesses right here out to the back of the car. So that's kind of my project for the rest of this evening. It's already, I think it's just after 6 o'clock. So I'll probably be out here for a little while longer. I'll probably be out here for another hour or so. But I'm going to work on getting that finished. And then if I don't finish it today, I'll get it finished up tomorrow. And then I'm going to try to get that harness back into the car so that I can start working on some of the other harnesses. So I'd like to get the Holly harness, kind of find a place for that, and then get some of this other stuff kind of taken care of. So I've got to get this harness taken care of. I want to get this in place. I'm going to use cushion clips for that. I'm going to get this side in place. I'm going to get some cushion clips on this. And then I want to get the connector for the fan wired. So I've got quite a bit of wiring that I'm going to do as far as the chassis harness front and rear. And then I'm probably going to, as I said, I'm going to get into some of the Holly stuff. So I want to get some of this stuff here taken care of and find a place for the Holly ECU. And then we'll see where we're at. I've still got cooling hoses that I'm dealing with, but I'm going to meet with the car owner here in the next couple of days. We're going to get our final heater hose list made so he can get those parts ordered. And then once all the hoses are kind of in place, what I plan on doing is making one single order for all of our Gates power grip clamps that are going to go on those hoses. And yeah, so I think that's it for tonight. I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. Priest, you got another thing coming. It's the next day, and I've got the rear harness pretty much wrapped up. I've got all the connectors on. I've got the split loom back on. I've got it re-taped because at every junction, basically everywhere where there's a takeoff on the harness, I'll show you in just a second, there's tape that wraps it to keep it, together. But I managed to fit the 3 extra wires in the harness, and it's not too bad. Luckily, the further frontmost portion of the harness is just a little bit bigger split loom, and so it fit in there pretty much no problem. Let's start at the front. I've got a new connector right here. So this connector has 2 greens in it. The one green on the left here, the larger one, and it's just larger because that's the wire size that I had that was the proper length. That goes to the reverse switch that is on the side of the transmission. The pink wire and the green wire next to it both go to the solenoid for the reverse lockout. The other wires that we were messing with in there are this green and this gray, which were already in the harness. I had just previously cut the connector off, and those go to the vehicle speed sensor, or the VSS. That's back in place. We're gonna come off of these wires in the dash harness, and that will attach to our controller for the lockout reverse. So this portion's all done. Going down the harness right here, I've got two green wires. One of these green wires goes to this connector here, which we just showed you. That one is the reverse switch that's on the side of the transmission. This is the plug that goes into that. It's just a standard weather pack connector. This is a male, and it's got male pins inside. This is going to plug right into the connector that's on the side of the transmission. I've got it all taped on the end, and you can see the junction here where we've taped it just back the way, you know, Ron Francis would have supplied it had there been a junction there. We added this junction because it was not previously there. So we've got our reverse light connector on the harness now. Here at the transmission, I've got the VSS connector. This is the one that I had cut off previously. It's back in place. I just soldered and heat shrunk the wires on to the connector. This is what it is. This is the connector that we bought. This is a genuine GM connector for the reverse lockout solenoid. And it ties to that pink and green wire that I showed you in the weather pack connector at the front of the harness. And then going back to the back of the car, and I had to relabel this because I had to pull the label off to get it. But this is the passenger side tail light assembly. Our green wire right here is for our reverse light. We're going to just tap off of this ground right here for our ground for that light, the same as we would for the other tail lights. So that's all in place. Our license plate light is still here. It'll get routed to the license plate light at the back of the car. And then over on the driver's side, again, I relabeled it driver's tail. There is a green wire that has been added, and that's going to be for our reverse lamp. And then again, we're going to pigtail off of this ground right here. So that's where I'm at today. I'm going to be emailing the customer tonight with hopefully what is going to be a comprehensive list of all of the coolant hoses that we have left. So any heater hose that we have outstanding right now, I want to get ordered so that sometime next week I can get all of those hoses in place and then get a count for all of our Gates clamps, the power grip clamps that we're going to put on all of the heater hoses and all the radiator hoses and stuff like that. Once those are in place, then I'll probably jump into getting all of the air conditioning hoses in place because I've got to figure out the routing for those. So I'll be back with you tomorrow. Don't know what I'm going to be working on tomorrow. It's going to be a crapshoot. It's just going to be kind of whatever I can work on the car and keep the forward momentum going. So I'll check in with you tomorrow. All right, so here's what I'm working on today. And I'm doing this because I only have a couple hours to work out here in the shop today. But it's Sunday. I'm finally fitting this back aluminum piece that we made for the car, because if you remember, the piece that we got back, or that we got from the previous builder, he decided to put some beads, like rolled beads, bead rolled, and he turned the thing into a freaking taco. And it was easier just to make a new piece, although I'm finding that's not really the case, than to deal with that piece that was just so messed up. So what I did first is I clamped it in place on either side with a couple of big vice grip clamps. So I got one here and I got one over here. And what that does is it just keeps the panel from shifting around. You know, if you try to drill it and the holes don't line up, it just wants to pull the panel over. And we want the panel to stay in place because I want the margins to remain the same on each side of the panel and front to back. So I clamped it in place. And what I'm finding is, even though I marked the holes, because that piece was so deformed that we made our template from, is that the holes that I marked aren't exactly in the right spot. Because as you can remember, that piece kind of shrunk up, and so all the holes are kind of just a little bit skewed. And so what I'm finding is, as I drill each hole, I'm having to lift the panel up just a little bit and then shift the drill bit to line up with the hole that's in the chassis, and then straighten the drill bit. So it's causing the holes to be a little bit oblong shape, but the rivets should cover all this, and then this panel is getting covered with you know, heat and sound mat and carpet. We're going to put a big drop box in here. So I've got the drop box right there, and that's going to go over in this area here. So I'm not going to worry about drilling the holes over here where the drop box is going to go. I'm just worried about the perimeter holes right now. So that's what I'm working on. What I worked on yesterday was getting the fuel lines done. So let me pull this piece out now that I've got it, so where when it goes back in, it'll hold it in the proper place. And I'll show you what I finished up on the fuel lines. Before I do that, let me take you out into the shop. I'm going to show you some of the parts that arrived. It's hot here today. It's it's the second week of June, and it's not unusual for it to be this hot, but it's hovering around 95, close to 100 degrees here today. So in the shop, the main shop, it's pretty warm right now. These 3 boxes arrived yesterday, and so these 3 boxes are our power window kit for the Coupe. So when the owner was here, we opened up this box here, and some of the finishing pieces are in this box. I think it came with some door cards. Don't quote me on this because we didn't pull everything out of the box. And then like armrests and some other stuff for the car. I also saw some window sweeps, so like edge moldings, so that those windows would seal up. The glass may be in here too. I'm not sure. But then the framework and all the other stuff is in the other 2 boxes. These boxes weigh a ton. And I just happened to be in front when the UPS guy dropped them off day before yesterday. And I just heard this thud. And then I heard another thud. And by the 3rd thud, I was like, I better go check to see what's going on, because that we don't normally get thuds when deliveries show up. So I went out and I saw the boxes. I tried to lift one. It was so damn heavy, I went and got that cart. So you can see I've got one of the shop carts that I put everything on and loaded it up and then wheeled it back here to the back shop. So that's one of the deliveries we got. Let me go back into the workshop. I'll show you what the other delivery was. Now the car owner did drop by yesterday, Saturday, and he dropped off some stuff that we had ordered. So we were short a couple of quarts of brake fluid, so he stopped by and dropped those off for me. The .3 stuff there is just the stuff that I use to lube the fittings. And then he dropped off this box here. So let me open up this box and I'll show you what's inside there, because I think you'll really like this one. So this is what's in the box. These are our tail lights for the Coupe, and I think I mentioned these earlier. These are LED, and they fit in those vent openings in the back of the body of the Daytona Coupe. So they really have a cool look to them, and there are multiple pieces. I believe this is just printed plastic. And then of course there's the LED strips in them. There is a reverse light at the bottom, and then there is a terminal board inside here. So basically a little chip that allows it to do all the functions and not combine everything in one. And then it comes with a connector already on it, and I'm assuming that they provide the other side of the connector to tie it into the Ron Francis harness. This is why we had to run that reverse light circuit to the back of the car. There's 2 more pieces that go along with this to kind of create a sandwich that it all kind of goes into, but really cool. Now I saw one of the other Coupe builders on, I think, the forum. I think maybe his screen name is Papa. I think his first name is actually Dave. Ordered a set of these too, but he hadn't received them yet. I'm assuming that we probably both got them about the same time, because I think the manufacturer that makes these had been waiting on some particular parts for the taillight assemblies, and so I think we probably got them about the same day or maybe a day apart. He also, I believe, ordered a set of the power windows for the Coupe as well. So he probably got his power window kit a day or so before us, because I think the company that makes them is back east, and it just took longer to ship out here to California. But so those are pretty cool parts that we got. And one part that came yesterday in just the standard mail was this 45-degree fitting that I had ordered, and I got that in the car. It's kind of hard to see with all the black that's there, but there's the 45-degree fitting. Already installed it with some Teflon paste, and we've got this hose ordered. So I think this hose is just going to kind of travel along the side of the radiator tunnel here, pop through a hole there, and then it'll connect into that steam port at the top. You can see we've got our cool tube in place. I'm working on getting all of this stuff finished up so that we can get all of our gates hose clamps. And I've got the bottom one in place too. That one's down there. And then the cool tube I've got in place, and it's just kind of resting in here. It's right here right now, but it's in there, and you can see back in there it's in place. So I've got all that kind of in place. Let me get this back panel off, and I'll show you the fuel lines that I finished up yesterday. Yesterday I worked on two things actually. I worked on those fuel lines, but I also worked on getting the harness down inside the tunnel of the car, and I've got it kind of just laying loosely here in the back of the car. So I've got the right side wiring over here, I've got the left side wiring over here, I've got the fuel pump and fuel sender wiring down there along with the license plate light. You can see back here I've just got it loosely laying in place. I'm going to have to figure out where I'm going to strap this in both the tunnel and in this area back here, but I really want to get this drop trunk box in before I get too carried away with that. Now, because these will be exposed now, and you know, I found a series of notes in the radiator box along with that reverse lockout controller that the car owner must have made with the previous builder, and it says right in it for him to install some type of drop box in the trunk. You know, my thoughts on that, if you're going to install a drop box in the trunk, why did you go through the trouble of drilling all of these holes that are clearly going to be exposed now if you were going to put a drop box in? It just, you know, stuff like that, I don't understand. I think guys get too caught up in, like, one, just following the assembly manual, because it's not a step-by-step guide. It's certainly not an order in which you should do things, because I tend to do things way different than the order of procedures that they have in the assembly manual. But all that aside, if you knew you were going to install a drop box, why did you drill the holes where the drop box is going to go? It makes no sense whatsoever. So we'll end up filling these with black pop rivets, so they'll kind of disappear. I've gone through the trouble of welding them shut before and then finishing and repainting the chassis, and it's so much work for such a minimal payoff that the pop rivets are just a lot easier, and in the grand scheme of things, no one's ever going to notice. So we're also going to make a top for this that's going to fold down over it, so they'll be hidden most of the time under some carpeting and a panel, so no big deal. Over here, for the fuel, where I started over here on the supply line, and I installed a 45-degree fitting. Now, I don't always install it like this, but in this case, it just made sense. Because of the configuration that everything kind of goes in place in the Coupe, it would put this line like way out here if I ran it straight, because you don't want to bend these lines so tight that you kink them. They do have a Teflon lining, but if you try hard enough, you can kink them. So you want the curve in them to be somewhat slight. So I added a 45-degree fitting here, and then knowing that, I made my measurement from here over to there as a 22-inch length, which worked out perfect. So we've got the supply line going through the 45-degree fitting into our 22-inch line over to our fuel filter, and it ties in there, and it works just swimmingly. So there it is right there. And then I went ahead and I tightened up the lines on the outlet side of the fuel filter as well, because I had previously just had those hand tight. So they're all tight now. The return line was a little bit tricky because I didn't want to add another 45, even though I had, got one when I was at the hose shop. It just kind of threw this line way towards the front if I used a 45-degree fitting there. They don't sell a 22-degree fitting. And so what I did is I just kind of got my tubing bender in this little area right here. And with a little bit of muscle, we like in the electrical trade like to call that a kick. I just put a little kick in it, and it's probably only about 7 to 10 degrees. And it just kicks it over enough that the line misses this 3/4 inch tube that's going up and down right here, and it allows that fuel line to go around it. So if I come from the other side, I'm gonna pick up that tie wrap because it keeps making noise when I step on it. You'll see it just kicks it away from this 3/4 inch tube enough that the line comes over here. This line is 18 inches long, and it goes right into the return of the fuel pump pickup and back into the tank. And I think it's all going to work out really well. Now, do remember, you need to lubricate your lines, even if you're using AN lines that have, the cone fitting where that tapered seat kind of meshes together with the fitting. You still want to put a little bit of motor oil, because this is fuel, a little bit of motor oil, and it doesn't matter what weight or what brand, on there to lubricate the threads and the cone of the fitting. So the cone of the male fitting, just put a little smear of motor oil and then run your fittings down. It'll allow you to get the fittings tighter, and they're less apt to leak later on when we go ahead and put pressure to all these lines. So the fuel lines are done in the back of the car anyways. I have the fuel lines for the front of the car. They're right down here underneath that vice grip clamp. But I'm not ready to install the ones in the front of the car yet. So that's pretty much what I got done yesterday on the car. And you can see what I'm working on today. I'm just really working on getting that panel fit so that I can then start working on that drop box. And then the back of the car here will pretty much be done until we go to, like first start. So everything back here is pretty much tight. I've got to get the brakes bled. So that's one thing I'll have to do in the back here. So I don't want to actually fasten any of that aluminum down permanently yet, because I still have fittings that are in inaccessible areas. So if you look right there on top of that tube is a T-fitting, and it's in a terrible spot. I wouldn't have put it there, but this is part of the build that the car owner had a part of with the previous builder. And I just try not to get in the habit of tearing everything apart on a car that I get here that has had work done by the previous owner. I want to maintain those memories that, they have of building the car. And for me to rip all this out when right now there's no issue with it, I mean, if nothing leaks, it'll be just fine. It's just going to be a serviceability issue later if they ever have to get in there and replace or repair that fitting. So, I'm going to leave it, and it'll probably be just fine, but that's kind of the way it is. I think I'm going to leave this video here because I don't want it to run too long. If you guys are enjoying the content here, as always, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.